Become unstoppable. 7. Stoic lessons for total transformation. Start today. What if the thing you call weakness is something you were taught to believe? What if every hesitation, every small voice that tells you to shrink, is not a fixed fact about you, but a learned habit of interpretation? Listen to this. You were not born weak. You were taught to be afraid of certain things, and you were rewarded, sometimes unintentionally, for avoiding them. The good news is the reverse is true too. Strength can be taught moment by moment, it can be trained. And there is a path built on ancient wisdom and practical steps that turns small, steady choices into an unshakable practice of agency. In under 20 minutes, you'll get 7 Stoic lessons that form that path. They won't promise instant miracles. They will teach you how to become, day by day, steadily and reliably, unstoppable. Start here. Insecurity is learned, not destiny. Your mind learned to stitch meaning onto events. A mistake became, I'm not capable. A silence became, they don't respect me. A single rejection became, I'm not good enough. Those are interpretations, stories you told yourself when you had no better explanation. Stories stick when they're rehearsed, but stories can be revised. That's the point. Change the interpretation, and you change the habit that follows. Picture your life as a courtroom where the verdicts keep arriving without appeal. Every slip, every awkward moment, every small failure gets entered into the record. Over time, the record builds a reputation that you then perform. Stop for a second and imagine. What if you could be the judge who reads the evidence differently? What if you treated each incident as data, not destiny? This is the foundation of the first Stoic key. Learn to feel deserving. Deserving isn't a feeling that arrives fully formed. It's a muscle you build by noticing facts and assigning them to a fair internal ledger. The Stoics taught that you can't control all events, but you can control how you interpret them. Marcus Aurelius reminds us, in effect, that what happens to us is outside our complete control. What we do with those events is within it. That's the operative distinction. Deserving grows when you stop letting isolated failures rewrite your worth and start cataloging the small wins you actually created. Try this small exercise now. Take a deep breath and bring to mind 3 real achievements, no matter how modest. Maybe you completed a course, supported a friend through something hard, learned to bake bread, or simply showed up when it mattered. Write them down. For each one, name the role you played. I studied and completed the assignment. I listened and comforted my friend. I followed a recipe and learned the process. Say them out loud. Own the connection between your action and the result. This is not arrogance, it is evidence gathering. When you rehearse what you did and claim it with simple language, I practiced, I persisted, I helped. You are adding entries to your internal record that say, capable, reliable, deserving. Do this a few mornings in a row and you'll notice the tilt of your self-talk changing. The quiet voice that used to default to doubt will have new competing memories. This is how lasting confidence begins. Not as a feeling that appears magically, but as a collection of truths you can point to. If you're watching this and that exercise lands, commit to one small public pledge. In the comments below, write one line. Today, I choose to trust myself. Don't skip this. Saying it publicly, even in the safety of a comment, changes the game. It shifts the intention from private wish to outward claim. It's small, but these public smalls stack. Why start with deserving? Because too often we race to action while our inner bank account of evidence sits empty. We try to fake confidence, to puff and posture, and it rarely holds. The Stoics would say, build internal proof before you demand external proof. You'll act with steadier feet when your identity has a ledger of real deposits. That ledger is what leads to the second key. Act despite fear. Listening to fear and never acting because of it is how you become an expert at shrinking. The Stoic practice here is simple. Focus on the thing you can control, your action. Epictetus taught that the only things truly yours are your intentions and your choices. He urged people to train their attention where it matters. If attention is a muscle, use it to point at your action, not at imagined outcomes or worst-case scenarios. You don't need to wait until the fear disappears. It rarely will. Courage is not absence of fear. It's action in the presence of fear. So take a tiny, non-glorious step now. Pick one task you've been postponing because of anxiety, something that can be completed in 5 minutes. It might be drafting the first paragraph of an email, starting a short phone call, or opening the app to practice a new language. Set a timer for 5 minutes and do it. That's all. The goal is movement. The goal is to create a new memory. You acted, even though you felt fear. A practical way to make this stick. Create a 5-minute rule card and carry it with you for a week. Whenever avoidance rises, read the card and do one 5-minute task. These micro-movements accumulate into a history you can point to. You acted. You don't need motivation. You need a proven ritual. There's a quiet trick here that makes learning faster. After you complete the 5-minute action, write down what you learned. Was the task different than you imagined? Did the fear shrink by 20%? Did you discover a next step? Treat the result as information, useful data. This is not therapy. It is disciplined learning. Each tiny action gives you evidence that contradicts the old beliefs that taught you to stop. Move now to the third key. Become competent through practice. Most self-help advice is happy to hand you slogans. You can do anything. Believe in yourself. Those lines are fine for a momentary lift, but durable confidence is built by competence, and competence is built by repetition, by the same patient, unsexy practice that turns awkwardness into mastery. The Stoics trained like this. They rehearsed principles until their responses were automatic under pressure. Here's a framework you can use today. Pick one skill that will change your life if you improved it. Maybe it's public speaking, coding, leading conversations, making sales calls, or simply being more organized. Now commit to a micro-practice. 15 minutes each day for 30 days. 15 minutes is short enough to be sustainable and long enough to create meaningful progress when accumulated. Design the practice so that it's focused and measurable. For speaking, tape yourself, giving a 2-minute talk and watch it back. For writing, set a 15-minute timer and produce a single paragraph that advances your idea. For coding, solve one small problem each day. Don't measure by outcomes. Measure by repetition and improvement. Did you practice 15 minutes today? Did you try a slightly harder version than yesterday? Keep a simple log. This is where the ledger of evidence grows thick. Competence gives you internal proof that scenes, not stories, determine you. You'll notice that the voice of doubt still shows up, sometimes louder than before, but now you have a file of results to open and show it. You don't have to convince the world. You convince yourself through performance. A short example here brings the point home. Imagine a novice guitarist who wants to play a song at a small house gathering. At first, fingers fumble, timing is off, and doubt screams. But with 15 minutes a day of focused practice, breaking the song into tiny measures, repeating the hard bars slowly, using a metronome, progress becomes visible within weeks. The first time the guitarist plays the song all the way through for a friend, the nervousness is still present, but competence cushions it. The friend's praise is icing. The real change was the quiet accumulation of practice. Notice the pattern. Deserving supplies the reason to act. Acting despite fear supplies momentum, and competence supplies actual skill. Each builds on the previous. That's intentional design, not accident. At this point you may be thinking, I've tried discipline. I tried schedules. It didn't stick. That's normal. Habits fail when they're too big, vague, or disconnected from identity. That's why the fourth and fifth keys matter so much. They shift how you relate to outcomes and to yourself. But before we go there, let's pause and give 2 short micro-anchors you can use this week. First, when you finish your 5-minute task, make 1 sentence of observation. I acted. Result. X. Learning. Y. Keep this log on your phone for the next 7 days. Second, at the end of each practice session, your 15-minute slot, Write one thing you did slightly better than last time. These small reflections train your attention to spot improvement, not only to judge performance. Now move with me to the next layer. The fourth key is deceptively simple and often neglected. Stop proving your value. We live in a culture of verification. Likes, titles, degrees, applause. They all feel like proof that we exist and matter. But when your sense of worth depends on external verdicts, you live under perpetual pressure. Stoic thinkers urge detachment from external goods, meaning not that externals are bad, but that your inner center shouldn't be owned by them. The Bhagavad Gita, from a different tradition, gives a parallel point. Act without attachment to the fruits. The point is practical. When outcomes become the judge of your value, you stop exploring, experimenting, and growing. You start playing not to learn but to survive. So how do you stop proving? Start by reframing one recent failure into specific learnings. Pick an instance in the last 2 weeks where you felt the urge to explain, justify, or prove yourself to someone. Outline 3 distinct learnings from that moment. Maybe the meeting went sideways because you didn't prepare a key example. Maybe you rushed a conversation. Maybe you misread a tone. Write those learnings down, not as moral indictment, but as precise feedback. I need to prep example X next time. I can slow down in conversation. I should ask clarifying questions before reacting. This exercise doesn't erase pain. It reframes it. It converts verdicts into a workshop. Your value doesn't shrink because a result was mixed. It expands because you now have a tool to improve the next attempt. Over time, this practice loosens the attachment to external validation and builds the internal capacity to keep trying. There's an extra power move here. When you act without proving, you free cognitive energy. You no longer spend time rehearsing defenses or imagining critics. You redirect that energy into learning. That's where true progress lives. Key 5 is a hinge. Update your identity. Everything above, deserving, acting despite fear, practicing competence, detaching from outcomes, prepares you to revise the story you tell about yourself. Humans are narrative animals. We interpret experiences through stories. Those stories, left unchallenged, become scripts we perform. The Stoics advised examining impressions and testing them against reality. To update your identity, you must find the old tape and choose a new recording. Start with a naming exercise. When a limiting thought arises, I'm not bold enough, I always freeze. Write it down. Trace its origin. Where did you first feel that way? Was it childhood? A single memorable failure? A relationship pattern? Most limiting stories have origins. You don't have to erase the origin. You simply have to see it and decide you will not let it be the final editor of your life. Next, craft a one-line identity statement. Keep it concrete and practice-oriented. Avoid vague aspirational claims. Instead of, I am confident, try, I am someone who prepares, then acts. Instead of I'm a leader, try, I am someone who speaks up to solve problems. Write this sentence on a card, put it where you'll see it in the morning, and repeat it aloud for 7 mornings. That repetition creates a tiny cognitive shift. Your actions start to align with a chosen identity rather than an inherited one. A useful micro-exercise here is to rehearse the day ahead in 2 minutes. Imagine a single test. Someone interrupts you, a deadline slips, a difficult question arrives. Picture yourself meeting that test as the person you declared. How do they act? What words do they use? Training mental rehearsal is not nonsense. Athletes, performers, and leaders use it all the time because the brain learns patterns as much from imagined rehearsal as from physical repetition. Remember, identity is performative. You decide, then act. The brain observes the actions and updates the narrative. Little by little, the old story loses its weight. By now you should be seeing the architecture. Deserving supplies a new ledger. Acting despite fear creates momentum. Disciplined practice builds competence. Detaching from outcomes frees your attention. Updating identity aligns daily behavior with chosen selfhood. Each key is a stair-step, but we are not done. 2 keys remain. deciding who you will be and unleashing your potential, and they are the parts that put your new identity into public practice. Before we step into them, let's anchor what we've built so far with a short example. Consider Maya, a project manager who hated presenting. Her inner script said she was inherently awkward in front of groups. She'd avoid meetings where she might need to speak. We start with deserving. She listed 3 specific times she led a project successfully, owned what she did, and said them aloud for 5 mornings. That slowed down the negative voice. Next, she began the 5-minute rule, opening a slide deck and adding 1 bullet point she could speak to. The fear was real, but she acted. She practiced 15 minutes each day for 30 days, rehearsing a 2-minute update, recording it, then improving. She reframed failures. One messy town hall became, "I need a clear opening." She wrote a 1-line identity. "I am someone who communicates progress clearly." She rehearsed the day ahead, imagined interruptions, and saw herself answering calmly. 3 months later, Maya volunteered to give a short update. It wasn't flawless, but it was decisive. She noticed that the old script barely whispered. The new evidence in her ledger outweighed it. She was not suddenly immune to fear. She was, instead, trained in a practice of responding. That's the kind of transformation these keys aim for, not fantasy. Steady, structural change. Now, before we move to the 6th and 7th keys, take a moment to anchor your own work. If you've already done the first 2 exercises, listed 3 achievements and done a 5-minute task, then leave that comment pledge I asked for earlier. Today, I choose to trust myself. If you haven't, pause and do it now. Small public commitments are more powerful than private intentions. When you're ready, get prepared for what's next. Deciding who you will be and unleashing your potential. These are not separate from what you've done. They are the natural extension. Deciding who you will be is not mere fantasy. It's a deliberate contraction of possibility into a single, daily lived truth. It's choosing one identity to serve and then building rituals and small acts that embody that choice. When identity and action align, cognitive dissonance collapses. You begin to trust yourself because your actions consistently match your declaration. That trust becomes momentum. To prepare for that move, create what I call a decision card. On one side, write the identity line you chose earlier. On the other, list 3 tiny daily acts that prove that identity. Carry this card for a week. Each time you find yourself hesitating, read the card and do one of the tiny acts. The act is the counter-argument to doubt. Over time, the card becomes less needed because the habit replaces it. Unleashing your potential, the 7th key, is about taking what you've built and putting it into the world in a slightly larger register. It's the step where competence and identity meet exposure. You don't leap to grand spectacles. You scale public tests in manageable increments. For someone who avoids speaking, a visible act might be asking a question in a meeting. For someone who avoids applying for jobs, it might be submitting one targeted application. The point is to expand your footprint slowly but deliberately. But there is a common sticking point here. Fear of being judged at scale. That's where a robust practice of non-attachment helps. When your sense of worth no longer hinges entirely on outcomes, you can risk more. The Bhagavad Gita's counsel to perform action without attachment to results is a useful complement to Stoic teaching. Both traditions steer you toward action grounded in principle rather than in craving for applause. That's not spiritualization. It is practical resilience. You take more swings because you are not paralyzed by the need for immediate proof. At this moment, you might be thinking of one visible act that feels just out of reach. Hold that thought. We will turn it into a plan. But before we script the public test, we must make sure the foundation is secure. Your practice, your identity card, your ledger of evidence. Those are the props for stepping into public space. There is a test you should run right now that many people ignore. Imagine the small visible action you want to take, a conversation you'll start, an application you'll submit, a brief talk you'll give. Break it down into 3 micro steps. For example, outline 1 talking point, rehearse 2 minutes, send an email asking for a slot, Assign each micro step to a day this week. This is how big things become inevitable. You don't need to feel ready. You need to design the chain of small, doable actions that will force readiness. We're at a natural pause here. You've learned how to reclaim deserving, how to act in the presence of fear, how to build competence through deliberate practice, how to stop proving your value through outcomes, and how to begin updating your identity. You have the templates, the 3-achievement list, the 5-minute task, the 15-minute daily practice, the reframing exercise, and the identity card. These are your tools. They're simple and deceptively powerful. What we haven't done yet is stitch the final 2 keys, deciding who you will be in a way that survives public pressure, and unleashing a sustained expansion of your footprint into a single plan. Those are the steps that take the private laboratory of self-change and turn it into a life that others witness and respect. They require a slightly different kind of courage, one that involves visibility and accountability. Before we go deeper into those last 2 keys, take this moment to check your progress. Do you have 3 achievements written down? Did you do a 5-minute task? Do you have a plan for 15 minutes a day for 30 days? If so, you've already started training the muscles necessary for being unstoppable. If not, do one of those things now. Don't wait for inspiration. When you come back, we will design a decision card that isn't merely aspirational but battle-tested. We will design a public test that is scaled to your current competence yet big enough to expand your world. We will also explore how to combine consistent private practice with brave public acts, so the two reinforce each other, instead of pulling you in opposite directions. The goal isn't to make you fearless. The goal is to make you capable of fearlessly acting in service of a chosen identity, again and again. There's one last thought before we move on. Transformation is not a polish you add on top of existing patterns. It's a process that reconfigures the architecture of your attention. The Stoics taught that our impressions, the small, repeated ways we interpret events, form the fabric of our character. If you change the pattern of interpretation, you change the fabric. That is why the micro-practices matter more than big declarations. They are the loom that rewrites the pattern. So prepare for the next move. Gather your card, find your 5-minute task. Keep the list of 3 achievements handy. When you're ready, we'll decide who you will be in a way that sticks, and then you will begin to move that new self into the world. The next section will show you how to make an identity decision that survives friction, how to construct morning rituals that align your day with that decision, and how to take staged public actions that expand your capacity without collapsing your courage. We will also explore the psychological mechanics of making the internal ledger visible to others, how to let your evidence speak without making external applause the judge of your worth. And when we step into that work, you'll start to see a clearer path from private practice to visible change. Each step will be designed so that fear is not the determinant of your motion. You will have a pattern to follow. You will have proof to show. You will begin not just to act, but to inhabit the person who acts. Stay with this. The momentum you've already created is fragile in the beginning, but grows quickly with consistent practice. The next moves are where many people stall, because the change asks for exposure. But exposure is where your new identity becomes real. We'll create a plan that makes exposure manageable and generative. Now, as you hold that small, slightly uncomfortable desire to expand, answer one question honestly. What is the smallest uncomfortable visible act you can do this week that would stretch your current world? Write it down. Don't overcomplicate. Make it concrete. We will use that note as the anchor for the next phase of work, the phase where you decide who you will be publicly, and then prove it with consistent, brave, small steps. Good. You wrote it down. You chose the smallest visible act that will stretch you this week. Keep that note close. Now build the decision card that will carry you from intention into habit. On one side of a small card, write your one-line identity statement, the concrete phrase you rehearsed earlier. Make it action-focused. I am someone who prepares, then acts. Or, I am someone who brings solutions to the room. Under it, list 3 micro-actions that prove that identity. 1-minute steps that are easy to do in the moment. For example, add 1 bullet to my slide deck, ask 1 clarifying question, send 1 follow-up email. On the reverse, Write a short if-then prompt for willpower moments. If I feel the urge to withdraw, then I will do one micro-action from the list. Fold the card and carry it in your wallet or keep a picture of it on your phone home screen. That small object becomes your behavioral contract. It reduces the friction between deciding and doing. When hesitation arrives, the card is a physical instruction. Read, pick one micro-action, move. You'll find the first weeks are mostly administrative, making the pattern consistent. The real shift happens when your brain notices repetition and updates the story it tells about you. Add a simple morning ritual that connects the card to your day. Each morning, 2 minutes. Read the identity line aloud, visualize one small test you might face that day, and pick the micro-action you will use if the test appears. Do this for 7 mornings in a row. This repetition wires expectation into action. Your day becomes pre-configured so you no longer need massive motivation to show up. There's a Stoic habit that pairs perfectly with this: the evening review. Marcus Aurelius and other Stoics recommended reflecting on the day, not to judge harshly, but to adjust. Spend 3 minutes at night listing one instance where you acted in alignment with your identity card and one specific improvement for tomorrow. Record these in a single-lined journal or a notes app. Over time, you'll build a compact ledger that mirrors the one you began with when you listed achievements. The ledger grows twice as fast when you both practice and reflect. Now we build a public test, small, strategic, and staged. Choose the visible act you wrote earlier. Break it into 3 micro-steps, assign each to successive days, and name the exact completion condition for each. If your visible act is speak up in a meeting, your micro-steps could be Day 1. Draft one talking point and practice it for 2 minutes. Day 2, ask the organizer for a 1-minute slot or an opportunity to share. Day 3, speak that 1-minute point in the meeting. Make the deadline real. Put it on your calendar and tell one accountable person what you'll do. Accountability matters in 2 ways. First, when someone else knows, your inertia faces a social nudge. Second, feedback becomes available. Ask your accountability partner for 2 kinds of support: a brief check-in the day before, and one focused, constructive piece of feedback after the action. Keep feedback specific and short. What worked? What could be tightened? Avoid moralizing comments. The goal is to collect data, not to amass criticism. When you take the public step, run a short, intentional after-action review. Write 3 lines: what happened, what I learned, and the one micro-adjustment for the next test. Treat the result as an experiment. If the outcome is positive, don't inflate it into a fixed destiny. If it's messy or unsuccessful, reframe the moment as crucial information for the next iteration. This is the Stoic method in practice. Treat life as a laboratory where impressions are hypotheses to be tested, not verdicts to be obeyed. A concrete example might help. Meet Ava, who had always put off job interviews because a tempered inner voice told her she was not interview material. She began with deserving, listing 3 concrete achievements tied to her role, saying them aloud each morning for a week. She followed with the 5-minute rule, preparing the first bullet of her personal pitch for 5 minutes whenever doubt rose. She committed to 15 minutes daily of practice, answering standard interview questions. Ava then made a decision card. I am someone who presents my work clearly, plus 3 micro-actions, 1 sentence pitch, 1 concrete example, and a question to ask the interviewer. She carried the card and rehearsed it each morning. Her public test was small: apply to one role she actually wanted and ask for a short informational conversation. She split the application into micro-steps across 3 days. She messaged a mentor and asked for 2 minutes of feedback the day before the interview. On the day, she spoke imperfectly but clearly. The outcome wasn't applause, it was evidence of action. She left the interview with a note. I prepared, I showed up, I learned X. That ledger entry was worth more than years of rehearsed doubt. This is the 7th key. Unleash your potential by scaling visibility while keeping the scaffolding intact. Building your footprint is not grandstanding. It's a sequence of disciplined exposures that match your current competence and push the edge just enough to produce growth. Each public step creates new evidence for your identity. Each micro-adjustment sharpens your skill. Over time, the slow accretion of these steps becomes the architecture of transformation. There is an important philosophical guardrail here: non-attachment. Stoic practice and the Bhagavad Gita's counsel about acting without clinging to the fruits converge on the same practical point. Your role is to offer steady, skillful action, and then to accept the result without letting it define your worth. This does not mean detaching emotionally in a cold way. It means owning your effort and learning from outcome without letting applause or critique set the thermostat of your self-regard. To practice that, add a short ritual to each public test. Immediately after, say aloud a neutral line. I did my part. The result is data. Then write one lesson. This ritual trains your nervous system to separate effort from valuation. You still care about results. You just don't let them claim authority over your identity. Now let's bind everything together. The 6 keys you've already internalized: deserving, acting despite fear, competence, stop proving, update identity, decide who you will be, are the private laboratory. The 7th, unleashing potential, is the public field where your internal proofs are shown and tested. Transformation comes when private practice and public exposure form a feedback loop. Micro-practice produces skill. Public tests produce evidence. Evidence strengthens identity. Identity simplifies choices. Simplified choices free attention for more deliberate action. This is the constructive spiral that makes someone over months markedly more capable. If you want a compact rehearsal of that loop, you act, you learn, you record, you update, you repeat. That is how fortress-level confidence arises, not from declarations, but from disciplined compounding. At this point, it's useful to create a simple tracking system that honors progress without turning the process into a numbers game. Use 1 line per day in a notes app with 4 fields: action taken, learning, mood, and 1 micro-adjustment. Keep entries 1 sentence long. Check them weekly. The goal is not to become obsessive. The goal is to create a testimony that shows shifts across time. When doubt speaks, open that file. Let the evidence argue for you. There are predictable frictions you will meet. Progress is uneven. Days of flatness and occasional regressions are part of growth. When you notice old scripts re-emerging loud and clear, don't treat the resurgence as failure. It is simply a signal that a deeper pattern requires more repetition. Return to the basics: 5-minute rule, identity card, and 3 specific micro-actions for the day. The simplicity of those tools is their strength. Now I want to give you a practical 7-day challenge that stitches the keys into a focused routine. This is not a shortcut. It is a concentrated week of disciplined micro-practices designed to generate momentum. Commit to 1 week and give full attention to each day. If you are ready, write the pledge in the comments right now. Today I choose to trust myself. That public line raises the stakes just enough to produce follow-through. Day 1, deserving. List 3 achievements and name your role in each. Say them aloud. Record this in your notes. Day 2, act despite fear. Choose 1 avoidance task and do a true 5-minute action. Set a timer, then write 1 quick note. What you learned. Day 3, competence. Pick 1 skill and do a focused 15-minute practice. Log 1 improvement. Day 4, stop proving. Take a recent setback and extract 3 precise learnings. Reframe the setback into a short plan for 1 correction. Day 5, update identity. Write your 1-line identity statement, put it on a card and read it aloud in the morning. Day 6, decide publicly. Carry your decision card today. Identify the micro-action that proves your identity and do it. Tell 1 person you're doing it. Day 7, unleash. Do 1 visible act you previously avoided. Small, intentional, and public. Afterward, do the brief review. What happened, what you learned, and 1 micro-adjustment. Each day takes no more than 30 minutes of deliberate work. The point is not perfection, it is orientation. The week's cumulative effect will be to alter the ratio of doubt to evidence in your internal ledger. Repeat this weekly cycle for a month and you'll accumulate a body of clear proof that you are changing. You may wonder how long this takes. There is no guaranteed schedule. What the Stoics insisted on was the rhythm of practice. Small, consistent acts beat occasional heroics. Competence and identity change are processes. Expect variation. Expect setbacks. Expect the voice of doubt. Keep showing up. Over months, the pattern shifts so thoroughly, you no longer recognize the old reflex to shrink. Close your practice with a brief ritual each day. 3 breaths, 1 line of gratitude about what the day taught you, and reading the identity line aloud before bed. This closure connects effort to meaning. It keeps you humane in the work of self-formation. We're near the end of this road, but not because you're finished. Because the real work now is to incorporate these practices into a life that persists beyond the urgency of a single video. Let the following integration guide be your compass. First, synchronize identity and environment. Make small tweaks to reduce resistance. If your micro-practice is 15 minutes of speaking practice, schedule it at the same time every day. Minimal friction. Open the same app or place your phone in the same spot. If your public tests require visibility, create predictable contexts, a weekly team update, a local meetup, or a friend who will listen. Routine turns discipline into default. Second, protect attention. Stoics taught that attention is our chief resource. Decide in advance what you will not do. Remove petty sources of comparison that tug at your worth. Limit scrolling, delete the app that triggers reactive comparisons, and create short windows for focused work. When attention is scarce, identity shrinks. Third, cultivate supportive connection. You don't have to do this alone. A small circle of accountable peers accelerates growth. Find one person who will hold you to the card and one person who will give you compassionate feedback. Keep both relationships action-oriented and bounded, short check-ins and focused reflection. Fourth, keep the experimental stance. After each public test, extract a single micro-adjustment and implement it in the next cycle. The experiment loop, act, observe, adjust, is the operating system of durable change. Fifth, be patient with time. Transformations that last are not built in dramatic bursts but in patient, iterative refinements. Each micro-action is a brick. Build steadily. Now, because this work can feel abstract in description, let me give one last specific plan you can start right now. Open your Notes app. Create a new note titled 7 Stoic Keys, Plan. Under it, paste your identity line, your 3 micro-actions, and your visible act broken into 3 micro-steps with calendar dates. Then set 2 reminders. 1 for your morning ritual, and 1 for your 15-minute practice. Tell one person your visible act and ask for one brief piece of accountability. That's it. The setup takes 5 minutes. The rest is routine. Before we close, I want to be very clear about what this roadmap will and will not do. It will not make you unafraid. It will not eliminate rejection or guarantee applause. What it will do, consistently and reliably, is build a structure of evidence, habit, and identity that makes you more capable of acting under pressure, learning from outcomes, and expanding your influence. After enough cycles, you will find that fear still visits, but it no longer governs the doorway. You will be steady and increasingly bold because you have organized your life around practices that generate proof. If this message lands for you, take one last small public step right now. In the comments below, type the pledge we asked for earlier. Today I choose to trust myself. That short line converts private intention into public commitment. It's a small nudge with outsized effect. If you want to carry this further, here is one final resource. Commit to a 7-day replay of the above challenge and share your plan with one friend who will hold you accountable. That social step increases the likelihood of follow-through without turning practice into a performance. If you found value here, like this video, share it with one person who needs to hear it, and subscribe for more practical lessons that blend ancient wisdom with actionable routines. You are taught to shrink by interpretations repeated over time. You can be taught, with equal repetition, to expand. Do the work. Gather the evidence. Update the story. Repeat the small public acts that make fear a signal rather than a stop sign. Build the ledger that proves you are deserving. Act despite fear. Practice with discipline. Stop proving your worth to others. Rewrite your identity. Decide who you will be. Then step into the world and let your competence and courage compile into something undeniable. Subscribe and channel or Stoic Wanderer Official for more insightful videos. Thanks.